Before the video begins, I wanted to make sure I took care of a couple things. Number one, at least for now, this is where the camera is going to be staying. I'm finally using the rear camera on my iPhone. I actually have you guys set up on top of my PlayStation right now. And when I was testing it, I honestly didn't think it looked too bad. I upped the quality a little bit. Hopefully autofocus isn't an issue. We'll see. Even if autofocus is still bothering us a little bit, the good news is I'm not going to be on screen for very long. This video has a lot less to do with this and a lot more to do with everything else. Number two, still using this mic for the time being. I fully intend to get a new microphone. I want to have something set up on my desk that I can use with much better quality, but I'm not made of money, so at least for now, I'm working with this. I also didn't mention it, but obviously I'm intending to get a proper recording camera as well. Number three, there's two channels that I need to make sure I shout out before this video begins. Without these channels, this video does not get off the ground. This video does not get completed, and I have nothing to work with. The first channel is Long Play Archive. When I was first getting ready to get this video completed, I had finished the script, I had started ideas for recording and different skits, different ideas in my head for the logo, etc, etc, etc. The only thing I was missing was gameplay. I emailed Long Play Archive as well as a bunch of other YouTubers about the gameplay footage they had concerning the game that I wanted to cover today. Long Play Archive was the first person to respond, and pretty quick too. Now the email conversation we had wasn't extremely long, but it was very receptive, positive, and I am extremely grateful. All footage of gameplay you're going to see today comes from a video recorded and uploaded by Long Play Archive. The video is available on their channel as well as tons of other content. They do exactly what their name implies, record long plays of video games and upload them for people to enjoy. They're also perfectly fine with other creators using snippets of their content as long as that creator adds their own personal touch. However, knowing that I was going to be using a sizable chunk of content, I still wanted to make sure that I contacted them so I wasn't overstepping a boundary. The only thing they asked is that we properly credit them throughout the video. And anytime there's gameplay on screen, you will see their name and logo in the top left corner. The other video I want to make sure that I shout out is somebody that I've shouted out multiple times on this channel. You probably already know who it is, Boy Dude Man. Boy Dude Man is going to be a person behind the scenes, at least for a lot of my early uploads as I get the hang of things. He's helping me editing and put things together and making stuff pop, etc, etc, etc. Anything that has to do with editing the video or creating content for the video, his hand will be there some way, shape, or form. Not that he's making the content himself, but he's making sure that I'm getting it done properly. Both of these channels will be linked down in the description below. I highly encourage you to go check out their channel. Without further ado, please enjoy the video. In my time gaming, I've been blessed with the opportunity to play plenty of consoles, like the NES, the Xbox, and the PlayStation 2, to name a few. But one console I always come back to, and will always have a special place in my heart, is the Nintendo GameCube. I have the fondest memories as a kid, spending all day grinding out tracks on Mario Kart Double Dash, exploring the open seas in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and uneasily making my way down the hallways of Luigi's Mansion. But one game stands above all the rest for me. The very first game I remember playing, and in my very biased opinion, one of the greatest games of the GameCube era. This is where it all began for me.
Super Mario Sunshine! Woohoo!
From the very moment I popped the game into the tray, I was in love with its vibrant colors and visuals. The ability to move freely meant that young Jimmy had his attention on the nearest thing to him, hardly did anything story related, and I only ended up beating the intro section after my first few times playing. I mean, it was my first game. I had no intentions of doing anything other than what I wanted to do. Over time though, I learned to pay a little more attention and actually play the game. Learning to use FLUDD took far more time than I'll admit, but even not knowing what to do, I wasn't frustrated. Each bit that I learned just made me more and more excited, and when I finally had the basics down, it was time to face the polluted piranha. Now, I'm not gonna lie, these things scared me a little bit as a kid, and every time I saw a goopy gunning for me, my heart rate jumped. But eventually, it was over. I had bested the first boss, if you could call it that. But before I could celebrate, suddenly I was thrown in jail and put on trial. I mean, what did I do? Didn't I just get done helping the island? My little brain didn't really get what was going on, but one message got through just fine. I wasn't leaving El Delfino anytime soon. Not that that bothered me. I cannot tell you how much time I spent exploring every nook and cranny of the hub island. Swimming out to the island oasis just off the coast, collecting every underground coin possible, seeing just how high up I could get myself. I even enjoyed getting rid of my second polluted piranha. But all this innocent fun and enjoyment came to a screeching halt because of one thing. Shadow Mario. This guy was the bane of my existence. That chase path will always be burned into my skull because of the dozens and dozens of times my inexperienced fingers pressed the same buttons over and over, just trying to get near him. The answer was simple. I had to practice. That's right. I had to practice chasing Shadow Mario. The route he took, the quickest ways through, and how to keep myself on target. It was a lot for my young brain to process, but before I keep going, let's do a quick recap. During the short amount of game I've played, I've learned to explore and be creative, focus on the task at hand, and even go through trial and error to get a desired result. And the media told us games were bad for you. A lot of my ability to persevere and deal with stress and anger came from this one little mission. Catch the blue doppelganger. And catch him I did. I must have lost my mind when I finally got Shadow Mario to fall. It was as if the game had finally been beaten. But no, not even close. This guy continued to haunt me as I played. Taking FLUDD when I entered certain levels, leading me on wild chases. Even when he's revealed to be Bowser Jr. later in the game, I still couldn't catch a break. I'm not sure my controller made it through the Mecha Bowser fight in Penna Park. It was more than my little brain could process. But still, I soldiered on, and tried not to get yelled at for being too loud. Sorry, Mom. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have an unfortunate truth to share with all of you. Despite spending so much time playing this game, day in and day out, I never actually beat it as a child. Most of my memories from later levels like Serena Beach and Pianta Village come from watching my mom play, or playing on her save when I wasn't supposed to. That never went over well, by the way. I was always distracted by something, or too focused on the wrong things. My attention span was exactly what you expected from a kid who was barely in kindergarten. Fleeting. And even when I was focused, it was more on, what's the coolest way to climb this house, instead of, how do I beat Petey Piranha? Though, don't get me wrong, I did beat Petey Piranha. Eventually I got older, and other games took my attention. Instead of a bright-eyed explorer in the world of Mario, I was the world's worst coach in Madden 06, or a complete fool in Super Smash Bros. Melee. Time went on. I became a squeaker in Black Ops 1, an inventor in Minecraft, so on and so forth. It wasn't until much later in life, when Super Mario Sunshine was the last thought in my mind, that I would get a chance to revisit my origin. On September 18th, 2020, Nintendo released the Super Mario 3D All-Stars Collection, which included Super Mario 64, Super Mario Galaxy, and, you guessed it, Super Mario Sunshine. Luckily for me, I already owned the Switch, since I desperately wanted to play Luigi's Mansion 3. Even if I hadn't owned one, I would have bought one then and there. A chance to relive my childhood was an opportunity too good to pass up. I was worried though. What if the nostalgia would be ruined once I got into it? I played it as a child. What if it's too easy and boring now? There was only one way to find out. I laid down on my bed and opened the game for the first time in over a decade. The game opened and the intro played. Instantly, I was transported back to being a kid laying on the carpet in the living room. The excitement creeped through my fingers and I could barely contain myself. I'm not kidding, I was losing my mind getting back into this game. I started playing and Oh my god. It was beautiful. It was smooth. And most importantly, just as I remembered it. On top of all that, I was older and understood what was going on. Now, obviously, FLUDD is the most important part of this game, and being able to use FLUDD in a more complex way was refreshing. Creating your own style of movement and getting creative with how you pair FLUDD use and platforming has always been my favorite part of this game, and is one of the biggest reasons why the levels without FLUDD are one of the few complaints I have about this game. Don't get me wrong, I get it, but those levels always seem so boring and irritating to me. It's linear for the most part, and kind of takes away from that creativity a little bit. Though, in its defense, it could definitely just be because of how I played. This time, getting through the first part of the game was easy, and I honestly got to where I left off pretty quickly. The first thing I did was go back to my favorite locations and climb them as stylishly as possible, just like I did when I was younger. I re-explored the hub area and somehow found even more things I hadn't even realized existed when I was younger. The pipe that can only be accessed from riding the boat. The indoor area where you smash box after box, and others. A few video game companies could learn a thing or two from older games like this. The hub is jam-packed with things to do, and somehow it doesn't feel crowded at all. It's relaxing and enjoyable, paired with the catchiest theme I've ever heard. One I can't get out of my head to this day. There's three main things I want to get into as we go through the rest of this video. Level design, soundtrack, and gameplay. I'm not going to worry too hard about the story, it's pretty straightforward for the most part. That being said, let's get right into it. As I already touched on before when I talked about the hub area, there is something to be said about these levels. Each one is completely unique with its own quirks and strategies. My favorite one has got to be Serena Beach. Quick side note, did the Phantom Manta give anyone else nightmares as a kid? Because it definitely haunted me. Back to the point though, Hotel Delfino was where I was at my most creative. Getting up and down the floors as quickly as possible, finding hidden spots, and running around the vent up top. I could have spent forever there. Despite being indoors, the space felt open and ready to be utilized in whatever manner I see fit. On top of all that, King Boo was my favorite boss fight. Maybe it wasn't really complicated or anything, but it was random and fun. On the opposite side of the spectrum, my least favorite level definitely has to be Pianta Village. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad world by any means, but it's also the only level that takes away FLUDD outside of a secret level, and we know how I feel about that. And if that wasn't enough, another one is the Secret of the Village level, which is the most stressful level in the game in my opinion. You have to go through the underside of the level, where one accidental input or overestimated jump with Yoshi means you get to do it all over again. And to top it all off, I have to complete a secret level area. My fate lied in the arm of the Chuckster, and I'm not kidding, I somehow managed to bounce off the platform he throws you on, and I had to take a break. I'll never forgive Pianta Village for that. This game also has one of the few instances where a water level didn't bother me. Nogi Bay has got to be one of the most interesting examples of level design I have ever seen. I mean, you'd expect any water-based world to be vertically inclined. I mean, come on, it's water. But I was not in any way expecting to be vertically challenged outside the water. I had so much fun swinging through the area and using FLUDD to get across large gaps in this larger-than-life level. Unfortunately though, this level does have my least favorite boss, Eelymouth. Jeez, do I even have to say anything? This is probably the only time the controls really got to me, and it took me multiple attempts to slog through this fight. Then again, maybe I'm just bad. The other levels provide their own types of fun, and are unique in their own ways. Each one plays to its strengths. Take Bianco Hills for example. It's the intro level. Nothing is particularly complicated, and most things are open-ended. It's a perfect place for a new player to get the hang of things, as opposed to a level like Penna Park, where platforming is more important and requires a little bit of finesse. The progression in these levels is beautiful, and it speaks to the quality that goes into these games. Now I can't forget about Rico Harbor. God, how much time I spent doing that squid race. Even after I was done with the objective, I loved seeing just how fast I could get through the track. I don't speedrun, but I definitely wanted to get as low a time as possible on that course. Aside from that, I have to say, the first star is the most complicated one to get, and a great test of your skills early on. No, I'm not forgetting the Yoshi level, no further comments. The only level we have yet to talk about is Gelato Beach, and that's because, well, there really isn't much to talk about. Another Shadow Mario chase, roll some watermelons, avoid plungelos. Fun enough, but perfectly average, if I'm being honest. Not bad, just average. Now, I don't think we'll need to talk about the soundtrack for long. Some of the songs are from older games, but redone in new vibey ways. What does that mean? It means nothing complicated. Just simple, catchy tunes to match the environment you're in. Others bring a nice new component to the ambiance. Okay, pause. Maybe I'm underselling these tracks a little. Don't get me wrong, it's not the soft but intense plin plon of Gwyn's song from Dark Souls, or the rising and foreboding choir from God of War. But these songs are infectious. I said it already, that hub soundtrack is the song of my childhood, and I still catch myself humming it absent-mindedly to this day. It gives off the air of relaxation, taking the day off and just falling into a beach chair to get a good tan. These songs match the environment they are contained within perfectly. The chase music is like someone making off with a heist. The boss music making the fight just that much more intense. Or, on the other side, the chill vibe of Bianco Hills. The questioning nature of Serena Beach. These hit the nail on the head perfectly. And there really isn't much else to say. Nothing groundbreaking, but definitely something you're not just going to forget later. Now, I know I said the gameplay was fun and smooth, and honestly, this is pretty true. It can also be a little unforgiving at times, and sometimes the movement can become a little clunky in rare cases. But it's a game from a completely different time period, with a lot less to go on. And even then, it was breaking barriers in platforming, so I can forgive that. Not that I didn't complain when it did happen, i.e. the Secret of Pianta Village, or platforming in Pinna Park. The only time I couldn't stand getting around were the secret levels. I'll always maintain that it kind of detracts from the game rather than adds to it, although I completely get the appeal of a 3D Mario on its own, just my personal preference. Back to the regular game though, I will always love the amount of freedom and creativity the player is allowed to have. Learning to pair moves with flood use, creating new and faster ways of beating the objective, taking in your surroundings to determine the best path forward. Yes, sometimes the path is straightforward, like climbing the windmill in Bianco Hills, but the developers were very aware of where the strength of this game lies, and took full advantage to make sure players could move as they please. And just when you finally tackled flood use and become an expert in your own right, the game throws more at you. The rocket nozzle and the turbo nozzle. The rocket nozzle is pretty straightforward to be honest, but the turbo nozzle has some potential to it. While these nozzles are admittedly a little underutilized, I take full advantage when I have the chance, getting distance with the turbo nozzle and reaching some questionable areas with the rocket nozzle. I can't recall a time I got bored with the gameplay. The bosses were unique, with a few reuses here and there with some twists. PD Piranha is a perfect early game boss, and the Bowser fight at the end of the game is hilarious. I could honestly replay this game over and over. Mario games have always seemed to pride themselves on being unique from one another, and Super Mario Sunshine is a shining example of this. I'm sorry, I couldn't miss the opportunity. This game may not be the game I have spent the most time playing, or the best game of all time, but I will always come back to it. This game is a part of me, and the best part is that it only got better from there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the beginning of what I hope will become an interesting series for everyone. Stay tuned in for episode 2 of the next stop in my gaming journey. My name is Jimmy Crust, and I'll see you all soon.